Good morning. It's John Adamson with Seeking Light. A little bit ago, I promised I would end up reading this letter that I'm about to read to you. And this is my letter to my employer regarding 3 mandates that my employer made consistent with the healthcare ETS, but also going beyond the healthcare ETS. And these are the practices. So, number one, employees that haven't had the hokey pokey have to wear an N95 mask. I've not been able to find that particular stipulation in the healthcare ETS. So that means that it's likely that they don't need to do that. Okay, let me turn that off. So that's one. Number two is that employees must have regular testing. I'm going to get to that in a minute. And number three is that employees cannot meet with other employees if they are unhokey pokeyed. So I sent a letter to the vice president of human resources in the organization I do PRN for. So it's only my PRN job that's requiring this. If you're not in healthcare, PRN means as needed. And so it's not a high stakes job for me. In other words, if that job went away, then I would still be able to put food on the table. It would be a little harder because it makes income for me. But here's my letter. Hi, blank. I hope this email finds you well. I appreciate the time it'll take to review this and consider what I will have to share in this email. And I understand that all considerations that blank organization has faced enormous stress related to dealing with this endemic. I called it an endemic, not a pandemic. If you're not familiar with that term, I would suggest you check it out. Dealing with this endemic and government-implemented mandates. However, some insights have come to light after further review of the laws and a review of the post-implementation impact of the blank organization vaccine mandates that warrant further discussion. Also, consistent with the healthcare ETS concerning soliciting employee participation in the development of the policies in the workplace relate to the institution of COVID policies related to employees. I didn't word that very well. Anyway, I cited from OSHA where they make it clear that employees have a right to challenge their workplace mandates without fear of repercussion. So I cited that. After reviewing Title VII of the Civil Rights Act and the OSHA Healthcare ETS FAQ for employers, it is noted to be unlawful that unvaccinated employees under religious exemption be forced to comply with the following provisions of instructions due to A, anti-discrimination laws, and B, HIPAA. So I state mandatory weekly testing, mandatory wearing of an N95, inability to attend in-person meetings, while other employees are allowed. The following will demonstrate why these demands upon an employee with religious exemption from vaccines from COVID-19 are A, discriminatory, and B, unlawful. And then I quote Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which says it shall be an unlawful employment practice, and then there's a long part there, that there's any, and I'm just skipping ahead, any preference, limitation, specification, or discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, because I made it a religious exemption application. And I pointed out that the same protections are afforded to other protected groups as they are to religiously exempted groups. So, for example, a person of African descent is informed he or she is not welcome to meet with Caucasians. So, according to, now that to us, and it sounds to me like awful. I mean, that's like much worse than me being told I can't eat with employees if I'm unvaccinated, but it's the same premise. The same legally protected group. 2, a Jewish person is forced to wear a distinguishing mark that sets him/her apart from others. Sound familiar? And so the mark I'm pointing out here is the mask, the N95, and our job issues mostly duckbill, which are hugely ugly, I don't have mine in my car right now. Hugely ugly, very distinguishing masks, and they're rather uncomfortable. And then 3, a person of Middle Eastern descent is required to be subjected to searches before entering a building when others are not. And so this is where I'm using that as an analogy for having to have weekly testing. It's like we're being searched regularly. Do we have a dangerous weapon on us? Up our nose. So anyway, I go on to point out this. Since all protected classes / individuals would be afforded the same protections against discriminatory practices of separate meeting, distinguishing marks that set them apart, I point out the mask, and separate testing, it is therefore a discriminatory act to require these same requirements of one practicing his/her sincerely held religious beliefs in the form of exempting him/herself from a vaccination. Such discrimination would be a clear violation of the provisions of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. I said, and also according to the OSHA ETS, healthcare ETS, there's no provision of removing healthcare workers who are unvaccinated. So I'm trying to tie that in with, why would we be removed from meeting with other healthcare workers on campus? There is a provision for removing healthcare workers regardless of vaccination status if they are symptomatic. So nobody's testing for symptoms except we have a temperature check. So all employees should be doing the symptom questionnaire, but it's not being enforced. And if the symptom questionnaire is sufficient for the healthcare ETS, why is that not sufficient for our work environment? Now, the weekly testing, from what I can find, is a requirement of the healthcare ETS, but anyway, it's still a discriminatory practice. So anyway, I go on to elaborate, and then I mentioned HIPAA. And she brings up the point that legally, HIPAA is not something that employers are mandated legally to comply with. So they can potentially disclose my health information. So anyway, she responds. I'm not going to read it all. It's very long. She thanks me for my email. I have a decent relationship with this lady. I'm not trying to be, angry, mean. I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm just trying to point out that these are concerns I have from a legal standpoint. Anyway, I'm not going to read her letter, but she points out that they are very much aware that it is potentially discriminatory, but they don't agree with that. They also feel that it's definitely not a violation of HIPAA because of what I just said. And the big thing she focuses on is the vaccination rate remains low. High rates of here's a statement. High rates of unvaccinated workers make it very difficult, if not impossible, to schedule staff in such a way as to make vaccinated employees available to all vulnerable patients in our care. So in other words, she's saying that unvaccinated employees are putting the patients at risk. And frankly, I looked on Google Scholar. Now, Google has a lot of investment in this whole vaccine narrative. They are fully behind it. And I looked at Google Scholar, and I tried to find any studies that showed that N95 healthcare workers were less likely to spread COVID compared to surgical mask workers. I did find some information about COVID N95 masks being better for healthcare workers to wear, reduce spread, yada, yada, yada. But I don't think that study actually compared it to a regular mask, now that I think of it. So anyway, there's really kind of this dearth of information related to whether the N95 is actually superior if employees are symptom checking, getting regularly tested, which we are doing, and show no outward signs of the disease. So anyway, long and the short of it is they're not having it. They're not having my argument. And I'm not mad at them. I understand, and she makes some good points. But what I want to do is share this with you, because if you decide to take a similar argument to your boss, that you are being discriminated against, that you are part of a protected class because you're a religious person, it's going to be a fight. And I'm not done. I'm just trying to think of how I can also further attack this. Now, my weekly tests, I want to bring up a story related to the weekly testing. The weekly tests that my hospital system does are very gentle. In fact, you walk in, they give you the swab. You only have to do the inner lower part of your nostril. It doesn't hurt, and I get paid for that, and I'm gone. Although I did hear of somebody who's a friend of my wife. She's in a Texas healthcare system where literally, well, they use this bristled plastic brush. Why? And she got it shoved so hard up her nose, she ended up bleeding in her sinus. She said it was ridiculously painful. So I guess it depends on how they're doing it too. But to me, that almost sounds like they're trying to make it uncomfortable on the employees who are unvaccinated. Whereas at least my hospital system has really tried to make it as convenient, comfortable. And there, nobody's like passing judgment when we walk in. The nurses are very friendly. I walked into my testing last week, and all these people were sitting around this table with duck bills, and I said, "Is this the ugly mask club?" And everybody laughed. It's not that bad, but I still believe I'm right. It's a discriminatory practice, and wearing these honkin' ugly masks is surely a discriminatory act, when I can't really find a lot of data to support that we need to be wearing them, especially not according to the OSHA ETS. And also I believe that, I just got distracted by something that came up, and I'm like, don't have enough coffee in me, and the other thought just went out my brain. So anyway, I am unfiltered on these videos. Anyway, I appreciate you watching. By the way, if you dislike what I have to say, will you do me a favor? Hit the dislike button. I know this sounds weird. Hit the dislike button and then comment that you disliked my video. You don't have to say why, just say I dislike the video. Because I'm not seeing anything. So right now I've got, it shows me 7 people are attending this. 3 have liked it. And also, if you liked the video, we just say liked as a comment, because I noticed I had a video the other day, over 100 views, one like I could see, which is unusual. Usually I have more than that. I'm not saying I have great videos, but more likes and no dislikes, which was surprising. And so I know the dislikes are probably gone according to YouTube, but it seems like they're throttling the likes. Do you have to test for your job? Ravenator asks. I like that name. Yes. Yes. And that was my argument. So if you happen to listen to the beginning of this video, I talk about how I attacked 3 different things my work is making us do. One is getting mandatory weekly testing, which according to the OSHA ETS, the healthcare ETS, you're supposed to do. The other is wearing an N95 mask. I can't find that as part of the healthcare ETS. That's something the hospital is doing. So I address that as a discriminatory practice. And then 3, not meeting at in-person meetings, not be able to eat lunch with vaccinated employees. And I don't do that anyway. I'm in home care. I rarely, if ever, see people. But still, it's a discriminatory practice. And so that's how I addressed my letter, and they weren't having it. But anyway, thanks for those questions. Anyway, I'm going to go. Got to get ready for church. I hope you all have a great and wonderful day. Take care. God bless.